You're walking through a silent forest in the far north, where the snow crunches beneath your boots and the air is so crisp it almost stings your lungs. A pale winter sun slips through the tall pines, painting the snow in faint gold. It's peaceful, timeless, and yet, without knowing it, you're surrounded by ghosts. Not the ghosts of recent centuries, but of people who lived here tens of thousands of years before anyone called themselves Finnish, Baltic, or Scandinavian. People whose blood still flows in your veins. Most of us grew up with the idea that modern humans came out of Africa, spread across Europe, and replaced the Neanderthals, primitive, doomed beings who couldn't survive the arrival of our smarter, more adaptable ancestors. But what if that story is wrong? What if those Neanderthals never vanished at all? What if they became part of us, their legacy written into our very DNA? And what if, here in the North, that legacy is stronger than almost anywhere else on Earth? For over a century, the so-called replacement theory dominated anthropology. Around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, the modern human, moved into Europe and the Neanderthals disappeared. It was a neat story, one that fit into a simple ladder of progress. We were the winners, they were the losers. But real history is rarely that clean. In recent years, advances in genetics and archaeology have begun to tell a different story. And that story is not about replacement. It's about connection, adaptation, and survival. Genetic studies now show that nearly all non-Africans carry between 1.5% and 2.5% Neanderthal DNA. That might sound tiny, but it's not about the amount. It's about what those genes do. And in Northern Europe, some of those genes are more common, more concentrated, and more influential than almost anywhere else on Earth. They shape pale skin that can absorb precious sunlight in dark winters, eyes of icy blue or deep green that echo the traits of ancient hybrids, and robust frames built for life in a frozen world.
When I was younger, the image of a Neanderthal I saw in textbooks was a hunched, hairy figure grunting in a cave. But the more I learned, the more that image crumbled. Neanderthals were skilled hunters, tool makers, and artists. They buried their dead. They cared for the sick. They were not evolutionary failures. They were survivors. And sometimes they were our partners. Archaeological sites like Grottes Mondrian in France have revealed layers where Neanderthals and modern humans lived side by side, even sharing the same shelter across centuries. In one layer, a human child's tooth was found among Neanderthal remains, dating back more than 50,000 years. That's not the footprint of a species replaced overnight. That's the evidence of mingling, of bonds formed between two kinds of humans. The DNA we've inherited from those encounters isn't random. Certain Neanderthal genes appear again and again in people of the North because they gave a survival advantage. Take the SLC24A5 and SLC45A2 genes, for example, variants tied to pale skin, crucial for absorbing vitamin D during the sun-starved winters of the Ice Age. The OCA2 gene, influencing blue and green eyes, carries Neanderthal versions still seen today. Even the MC1R gene for red or blonde hair has deep Neanderthal roots. These traits weren't just aesthetic, they were life-saving tools. In an environment where winter could last most of the year and temperatures could kill within hours, every small adaptation mattered. And while Southern Europe later absorbed waves of new people from the Mediterranean and the Near East, diluting these northern traits, the populations in places like Finland, Estonia, and the Sami lands remained isolated, acting as a kind of genetic time capsule.
We can see the legacy of that isolation in real lives today. Imagine Anna, a teacher from Helsinki, pale skin, bright blue eyes, and hair the color of straw. She spent her life skiing through forests in winter and foraging berries in summer, feeling an unshakable connection to the land. When she took a DNA test, she found a higher-than-average share of Neanderthal variants, especially those linked to skin pigmentation and immune resilience. Then there's Jonas, a fisherman on Estonia's Baltic coast. Tall, broad-faced, with deep-set eyes, He looks like he could have stepped out of an Ice Age hunting party. His family has lived in the same village for generations, enduring the same cold winds and long nights. His DNA carries Neanderthal traits tied to bone strength and cold weather endurance. Neither Anna nor Jonas sees these genes as strange or foreign. They are part of who they are, a quiet inheritance from people who faced the harshest conditions and endured. In the High North, among the indigenous Sami people of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, this connection is even more striking. The Sami's traditional life, herding reindeer, fishing frozen rivers, building shelters against the Arctic wind, mirrors the resilience of the Neanderthal hybrids who once roamed these lands. Genetic studies show that the Sami carry Neanderthal-derived genes for cold resistance and vitamin D absorption at higher rates than most Europeans. Their oral histories tell of ancient ones who lived in the mountains, clothed in skins, wielding tools of bone and stone. Whether those stories are memories passed down across thousands of years or echoes of later encounters, the genetic evidence is clear. The Sami are keepers of a deep, ice-forged heritage. What makes all this even more fascinating is that for decades, much of this connection was ignored or deliberately downplayed. Early scientists preferred a story that separated us from Neanderthals, portraying them as a failed experiment in human evolution. This wasn't just bad science. It was a reflection of the biases of the time. To admit that Europeans shared ancestry with Neanderthals didn't fit the idea of a clear ladder from primitive to advanced. It was easier to draw a sharp line between them and us. But the truth has a way of breaking through. Fossils like those from La Chapelle-aux-Saints, once misinterpreted as proof of a stooped, ape-like creature, are now understood to have belonged to individuals with arthritis, not to a half-beast. Other remains, like those from Oase in Romania or Vindija in Croatia, show hybrid features, skull shapes and bone structures that are neither fully Neanderthal nor fully modern human, but something in between.
The replacement theory, when you look closely, begins to fall apart. This was not a battlefield where one side annihilated the other. It was a meeting place where two worlds merged, creating a new kind of human, uniquely adapted to the extremes of Ice Age Europe. And in the frozen forests and coasts of the far north, that legacy has endured in the faces, bodies, and even the immune systems of people alive today. You may be one of them. If you've ever wondered why your skin burns quickly in summer but soaks up every drop of weak winter sun, why your frame seems built for endurance in the cold, or why your family's features echo those of ancient reconstructions in museums, you might just be looking at the Neanderthal in you. Before we go further, remember to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this journey into the deep past. Your support helps us bring these hidden stories to light, and there's so much more to uncover. Now, let's follow the trail even deeper, because the evidence ahead will change the way you think about human history forever. The deeper we look, the more the neat story of replacement crumbles. Instead of a clean break between species, the evidence points to thousands of years of interaction. In some places, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens shared the same landscapes for generations, trading territory, knowledge, and genes. Hybrid children were not rare accidents. They were part of the natural flow of life in Ice Age Europe. And in the north, where isolation preserved these traits, their legacy became woven into the identity of entire populations. Think of the Finnish wilderness during the last glacial maximum. Vast sheets of ice, bitter winds, and long months without the sun rising far above the horizon. Only those with the right blend of traits could survive. The pale skin that Neanderthals had adapted over hundreds of thousands of years to absorb scarce sunlight became a priceless advantage. Their strong builds and efficient metabolisms helped conserve heat and endure long hunts in freezing conditions. Those traits didn't vanish with their disappearance from the fossil record. They lived on in their children, the hybrids, and through them, in us.
Skeptics often point to the figure of 2% Neanderthal DNA,
and argue that it's too small to matter. But imagine a recipe. Just a pinch of the right spice can transform the whole dish. The Neanderthal genes that survived were not random leftovers. They were selected for because they offered something valuable. In the north, they shaped not just appearance, but immunity to cold weather pathogens, tolerance to low light, and even certain neurological traits. Studies have linked Neanderthal variants to differences in sleep cycles, pain sensitivity, and social behavior. Adaptations that may have made life in small, isolated groups easier. In the Baltic and Scandinavian gene pool, these features are more concentrated than in southern Europe, where migrations from warmer climates brought other adaptations. One striking example is the mitochondrial haplogroups U5 and V, found at unusually high rates in Finland and the Baltic region. These are direct maternal lineages that trace back to Ice Age hunter-gatherers, lineages shaped in a world where survival depended on the same skills and endurance as the Neanderthals. In this way, genetic science allows us to follow invisible threads, linking the present to a time when Europe was a land of ice and giants. And the picture it paints is not of a conquered people fading into extinction, but of a merger, a blending that produced some of the most resilient humans the continent has ever seen. Of course, the old myths die hard. Many early reconstructions of Neanderthals gave them uniformly dark features, claiming light skin and eyes only emerged 10,000 years ago with the spread of farming. But newer data shows that some Neanderthal variants for light pigmentation are much older, and they were already circulating in Europe's ice-aged populations long before agriculture existed. The pale hair of Anna, the blue eyes of Jonas, the fair skin of the Sami. These are not modern inventions, but echoes of an ancestry stretching back over 40,000 years. By ignoring that, older narratives have not just misled us about history, they've erased part of the indigenous heritage of the North.
And this isn't just about the past. Understanding Neanderthal ancestry has real implications today. In Finland, for example, certain immune system genes inherited from Neanderthals appear to help resist respiratory infections more common in cold climates. Other variants influence how the body reacts to UV light, or how the body manages fat storage in winter. These are the same challenges our hybrid ancestors faced, and the solutions they evolved still matter. By studying these chains, scientists can learn more about human health, disease resistance, and adaptation. Our ancient past isn't frozen in the ground, it's alive in ourselves. But perhaps the most important lesson is about identity. The old replacement theory created a divide. Modern humans versus Neanderthals, us versus them. The reality is messier, but far richer. Neanderthals were not others to be defeated, they were kin, and their story is part of our own. In Northern Europe, this connection is more than just scientific fact, it's a living bond with the land, forged in the struggle to endure long winters and scarce resources. It's in the traditions of the Sami herders, in the fishing villages of the Baltic coast, in the quiet resilience of the Finnish countryside. It's in the shared human instinct to adapt, to endure, to pass on what works to the next generation. When you walk through a snowy forest, when you feel the low winter sun on your skin, you're experiencing something your ancestors knew deeply. And among those ancestors were people we once called Neanderthals, hunters and gatherers who mastered the cold, who thrived in a land of ice and shadow. Their blood still runs in you. Their strength still shapes you. And by recognizing them as part of us, we don't just rewrite history, we reclaim it.
So next time you look in the mirror, don't just see a modern face. See the endurance of the Ice Age, the survival of traits honed over hundreds of thousands of years. See the Neanderthal in you. And remember, this story isn't about extinction. It's about survival, adaptation, and the truth that our past is far more interconnected than we once believed. If this journey into our ancient heritage has made you see yourself differently, let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts, your family stories, or even your own DNA discoveries.
And don't forget to subscribe to Prehistoric Medievals for more deep dives into the hidden chapters of human history. There are many more secrets buried in our past, waiting to be uncovered.